Good morning. Welcome back to Fit Body Secrets, where my mission is to bring you guys inspiration, motivation, and a ton of tips to help y'all on your fitness journey. And I honestly think I just want to title this Coffee with Coach Cheryl because I just feel like taking a few minutes to just talk. I woke up today just feeling incredibly anxious. And I don't know if you can relate to this. Like, I don't exactly know why all of a sudden today I felt anxiety through the roof. And it's sometimes it can be so hard not to let that stuff distract you. And it was so hard for me to like stay focused this morning when I was doing my rowing intervals. But I wanted to talk to you guys about this because something that really helped me, I think that in a lot of times I could see where somebody in this situation would have been like, I can't focus on working out right now. I just need to go focus on whatever else is on my mind. I just literally took a little whiteboard out and I just started writing down the things in between my sets that were bothering me. And it helped like calm my nerves down a little bit. And I still feel a little bit on edge, but like, I don't exactly know why. And again, I think this is something I wanted to talk to you guys about because I feel like it can actually deter you from like just staying consistent and really can affect your overall day. But I'm not going to let it do that. I'm just going to kind of like let the feelings be and move on. Just something that I wanted to start by talking to y'all about today. I just have a lot of stuff on my mind. It's the new year. Obviously, there's just so much stuff going on. And whenever I get into a place where I have time to be creative, I tend to take on a lot. So as you see today, I am back in my kitchen for my podcast because my podcast studio that I'm working on is now under construction. And last week, somebody said it looked like I was in a padded room. So I did take some initiative and started working on it, but now it's a complete mess. And I'm like, I'm not even going to go in there right now because, again, when we talk about anxiety, like for me, I need to have clean, clear spaces. And that just is not going to be good for me to talk. So today's topic is going to be a couple of things, all kind of related to macro tracking per se. And I will never, ever, ever label myself a macro coach because macronutrients are just one piece of a nutrition puzzle. And my goal as a nutrition professional is to put all of the pieces together for my clients. But this tends to be the biggest thing that people need to start taking more seriously when they actually do want to be able to create and control their results. In fact, I know myself years ago, I was like, I'm eating clean, I'm doing all the right things, I'm working out. Like, why am I gaining weight? Why am I not losing weight? And why do I feel like I have like an unbelievably inconsistent appetite? Like, that's all the things I was experiencing. And like I said, coffee with Coach Cheryl because I'm going to sip on my mug. By the way, somebody last week mentioned that the sticker was on the bottom of my mug. It's still there. See it? This is like my morning drink. By the way, it's half decaf. It looks like a big cup, but it's really not. It's half decaf. I just love the taste of coffee. In fact, I put on one of my Instagram reels recently that I'm the girl that likes my coffee to taste like dessert because I do. I like this one I ran into the peppermint mocha flavor. This one is cookies and cream, and it's actually really good. So, little tangent to get back on track with talking to y'all about macros and what I really believe in as a nutrition professional is I teach flexible dieting. So I really teach people that you have to have the basics covered. So first and foremost, let me just start by talking about what exactly are macros per se. Okay, so everybody, some of you guys might already know this. So all of your calories come primarily from your macronutrients. Your macronutrients are your protein, carbs, and fats. So whenever you're ingesting calories, you're ingesting them from either protein, carbs, and fats or a combination of the three. So, proteins, every gram of protein has 4 calories, every gram of carbs has 4 calories, and every gram of fat has 9 calories. And that's how you would come up with your caloric needs is based on your macronutrient needs. And I think the biggest thing is people are like, well, should I be counting calories versus macros? I really think that looking at macronutrients is much more beneficial because I could be eating 1,500 calories, but not getting in enough protein. And if my goals are, I want to be able to look leaner, then I'm going to be losing muscle mass, not just fat mass. So looking at macronutrients, even though the overall goal is keeping calories under control, is a little bit more specific and is going to get you a little bit, obviously, better results. And this is where I want to start by talking about with macro tracking. There's kind of a progression to it. And a lot of you guys are already there. You're right there. You need this level of obviously precision in your nutrition, but it can be overwhelming. Or if you don't know exactly how to calculate your specific macronutrients, or you've tried calculating your macros in the past and you haven't been successful, usually that's where you need some more specific customization with your nutrition. And I'm going to go over a couple of options for that as well to help you guys out with that. But so let's talk about the prerequisites for getting into like the numbers per se. All right. So if you're somebody who has already got a good solid foundation of like, protein, carbs, and fats, like, like you have to be eating balanced meals. And maybe you also want to be able to understand how to be moderate with specific things that maybe you don't feel like quote unquote clean. So like having a little bit of dessert here or there, knowing how those things fit into the factor. You are somebody that's kind of past the beginner stages of your nutrition journey. Like I always say, like, just like in the CrossFit gym or in any gym, when you first start, like it's like a PR every single day, right? Like you literally just show up and you lift heavier, right? And then over time, it's like the PR stop coming. It's the same thing with your nutrition. Like when somebody first starts off and they have 100 pounds to lose, they were likely like drinking a bunch of calories from, sugary drinks. They're probably eating out a ton, literally just like, I'm going to eat at home more, or cutting out sugary drinks or stopping snacking. And all of a sudden weight starts changing because they're able to control their calories so much easier because they have so much work to do. It's kind of like they're at the outer stages of building, or they're just building the foundation. So it's easier at that point to make small changes that create big results. When you're past all that, you need some more precision. And that's where macro tracking is going to be helpful for you. Okay, so the other thing that I didn't mention here that I think is important to mention is, let's talk about like hormones and women that are struggling with like, I'm gaining weight in menopause or perimenopause, and I can't figure out why I don't feel good. Macros done right, the right way, can actually help you with a lot of those symptoms, help you control your weight, help you actually gain control over your body and feel good in the process. Not everybody that goes through perimenopause and menopause deals with hormonal weight gain and stuff. So this is why this kinds of stuff can be very beneficial for you. Again, knowing your numbers is so important. So let's kind of go into if you are ready for macro tracking. Okay. So you already know you are ready for macro tracking. You've been dieting for so long. You've got a good, healthy balance of meals. You know, all of that kind of stuff. Or maybe you've been dieting for so long and you're not getting anywhere. Okay. So this is where taking a macro-based approach might really give you the exact answers to all of your problems. Okay. So the first thing that you need to know is that whatever you're doing right now is not working. And this is going to be the one thing that gives you an accurate assessment of how many calories you're taking in and the macronutrient breakdown of those calories, so that you can now make adjustments to things. So this is the trackable data that you can change. If you don't have data, you're literally guessing. You are throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. You're removing foods, you're cutting out sugar, you're telling yourself you suck. This tells you exactly what you're doing. And sometimes that can be very eye-opening. I had a client and she came to me and she was eating very good. She's like, I cannot believe how I was like over consuming so many calories and didn't even realize it because she ate so good. And it's just the awareness that people don't have when they're not focusing on it. So you're already past all that beginner stuff. It is time to take it to the next level. So first things first, a couple of things you have to know first and foremost. Number one is you have to know your numbers. So first step is calculating your macronutrient needs. I have a link in my show notes to an automated macronutrient calculator that I have customized myself. I'm still working on the fine tuning of the actual delivery to you guys. So if it looks like there's a bunch of decimal points, that's because I'm still working on that. And I am not the techie girl. I am the nutrition girl. So this kinds of stuff, not my what's the word I'm looking for? Not my forte, not my forte, but I am really happy with everything. This is built on really giving you guys the best place to start for your specific goals. Okay. So number one is knowing your macro numbers. So when you're setting up yourself for goals, when we talk about calculating macronutrients, I get this a lot on the forum or whatever, is I want to lose fat and I want to build muscle. Okay. Those are two different processes. You have to know what your primary goal is. So do you have muscle mass that you want to make sure that you're maintaining and continuing to build, but you want to remove the layer of fat that's on top of it? So like you're trying to reduce body fat percentage. That means you need to be in a fat loss focused plan. Vice versa, if you are under muscled and you need to build, then you might want to be in a building phase, because building is going to put you into a slight calorie surplus in order for you to build lean muscle tissue, because that does require extra energy. Fat loss requires you to have a calorie deficit. Building requires at a minimum of maintenance and a slight calorie surplus just to ensure that you are in a good phase, getting enough nutrients in. Okay, so you got to make sure that you clarify what your specific goals are when setting up your calorie and macronutrient needs. Once you have your numbers, now you got to know your ranges. And this is where a lot of people go wrong. So if you are somebody who has gotten overwhelmed with macro tracking, you do not need to literally be a macro scientist and play macro Tetris. So let's just say, hypothetically, your numbers are 225 grams of protein. 225 grams of carbs, 145 grams of protein, and 60 grams of fat a day. Okay. You do not need to every single day be zeroing out those numbers. You just need to know what your ranges are. And that might look like, okay, if my goal is 225 carbs, maybe you want to keep that as your ceiling. And as long as you're anywhere between like 185 and 225, you're okay. Maybe 60 grams is your ceiling on fat. And as long as you're between 50 and 60, you're good to go. That makes life so much easier, right? And it's still very effective. It's very, very effective. Most people do not need any more precision than that. Okay. In fact, most people don't even as much of the macro precision, as long as they are getting in a good balance, getting enough protein in. All right. So like the macronutrients really give you control over how you build your meals and the flexibility to build meals that you enjoy. And we're going to talk about that. So you know your numbers, you know your ranges. Now you just need to simplify tracking your food. Okay. So like MyFitnessPal is great. I personally use macros first. I did use MyFitnessPal for a long time. But I have a relationship with Macros First, and I really enjoy their app. In fact, I would love to get all of my clients switched over to Macros First, but a lot of them already paid for MyFitnessPal Premium. And I also am working on integrating Macros First with my client tracking software so that they'll be able to automatically upload things without having to worry about having like a second spreadsheet. But that is my preference on food tracking apps. And once you have a food tracking app, it's now you're literally just tracking your meals. This is where having that base foundation comes into play. But even if you don't have that base foundation and you're looking to just get started with macro tracking and you want to you're ready to dial it all in, right? Like you're like, yeah, I know that this is exactly what I want to do. I want to put all the steps together, because you don't really have to have all of that put together. You just have to be willing to take the effort right now to do both at the same time. And so the next step really is knowing what your meal building buckets look like. And this is where having that foundation is really helpful for you. So what I mean by meal building buckets, bucket number one is going to be your protein sources. What are your top sources of protein? So like, where do you want to get your proteins from? Things like, I kind of think in terms of like meals. So breakfast, usually for me, that's going to be eggs or egg whites, usually a combination of the two. We can talk about that. Non-fat Greek yogurt, cottage cheese. I tend to like a little bit less I'm not going to have like steak for breakfast. You could, but it's just not my preference. Other, protein sources, any protein really matters. So people are like, what if you're vegan? Okay, find your vegan protein sources. I also have food lists that I give to all my clients to help make this simpler for them, to show them some different ways to get their protein in. You can also combine protein sources. So like for me, breakfast is normally egg whites and some low-fat cheese. I like to put cheese on my eggs. Cheese is also a source of protein. So once you know your meal building buckets, you got a bucket for protein. You've got a bucket for carbohydrates. And I call this bucket carbs and fiber, because I really like you guys to focus on complex carbohydrates that are going to be more whole grain based, more whole food based. That's going to get your fiber intake up, which when we talking about hormones and all that kinds of stuff, this is another very important nutrient that's not a macronutrient, but whenever we're talking about food quality, your carb sources should be coming mostly from complex carbohydrates. Your fat sources, and then those are your three main macro buckets. But then I also have a bucket for produce. So are you getting some fruits and vegetables at your meals? and also for flavor. So how are you going to make that food taste good? Okay, so like surely you can track macros and eat chicken breast and broccoli and white rice, but it's also very bland and boring, right? So we want to add some flavor, add some nutrients to it, and make sure that you are actually enjoying the meals that you're building. And this is why I also like macro tracking, because you get to build that yourself. You get to figure out how you want to spend. It's just like you have extra money and you get to figure out how you want to spend your free. It's proteins, carbs, fats, produce, and flavor. And every meal, you are literally just identifying, where am I getting my protein from, my carbs, my fats, my flavor, and that's it. And for the first couple of days when you are just starting to apply the macros, don't focus so much on being perfect every single day. Track your food, and I'll talk about how to make it a little bit easier for you in the beginning to get closer to your numbers. But pay attention at the end of the day to where things are falling. Like, where are things falling? And then the next day, just make some adjustments to those foods. What's going to happen is over the first couple of days, you're probably going to have some meals that you repeat, and you can optimize those meals. And then your next time you change that meal up, you can do the same thing. You'll optimize that meal. So now you're really learning how to build not just a macro based plan, but now a new nutrition routine. So I like to say, going back as a kid, right? We all kind of had the same, our parents cooked the same meals on rotation, right? Like, so you can probably remember off the top of your head the most common meals every single week in your household. And it's the same thing right now. You're cooking the same shit every single week and you're serving it on different days. You're literally creating that very same routine with foods that are in line with your specific goals. Okay, so you got your macro buckets. Now you're just literally balancing out your meals. In the beginning, when you are starting to build your meals, what I normally recommend doing is first off, looking at your macros. You can look at all of them, but looking at your main one, which is protein. And as you are logging your protein and you're about to cook, if you're logging as you go, obviously the best case scenario is if you are that perfect person, then you're like pre-tracking everything. That's going to be the best case scenario. But I'm talking about making it simpler for you guys is as you go, when you go to log something, let's just say you go to log egg whites and you only put in 50 grams of egg whites and you're like, that's only 10 grams of protein. All right, I probably should do double that, right? And then I'm going to add some cheese to it. So you can quickly just make some adjustments. Or maybe you go to log your bagel and it's like 55 grams of carbs and you're like, wow, that's going to be a lot of carbs and I only have 150 grams of carbs all day. So you can choose to have the bagel or maybe swap it out for something else. So you can really learn how to plug and play and adjust things as you go without feeling like you have to be so pre-planned and disciplined all of the time. So that's really helpful. I think that just also making sure that you're paying attention to nutrition labels. So this is something else that people that have a preliminary background in nutrition and you're ready for macro tracking, you likely already do this. You're very aware of nutrition labels. While I want you guys to pay attention to the ingredients list, I think that it is important to make sure that you're not getting, obviously you're getting actually good quality food, but paying attention to the macronutrient breakdown of your foods as you're buying them. So like a couple of my staple snacks, I love popcorn. So whenever I've bought bags of popcorn, I always flip it around and I'll be like, all right, which popcorn has like less fat and is mostly carbs? I try and keep my foods particularly in one bucket because it's easier for me that way. If I wanted to have 2 servings of popcorn, I'm not doubling up 2 macros. You're also going to control your calories a lot easier because the more combination foods you have in, obviously the higher your calories are going to go in those little meals. So that really helps me a ton. And the really cool thing is that like once you have your numbers, you have your ranges, you've taken maybe 2 weeks of just like plug and playing, figuring things out. You now have a new nutrition routine. You've built things out. You've literally created your system for creating sustainable results. Now, I think the biggest thing is with macro tracking, it is obviously, like I said, just one component. You want to make sure that your foods are that you're eating are all good quality, that you have good meal building habits. There's a couple of things that people have to understand if you want it to be effective. Number one is you've got to be tracking everything. And this is probably one of the biggest mistakes I get. People will track like their main meals, they'll track their big snacks, but if they're grabbing a handful of something in between, or maybe they forget to log the creamer in their coffee or the oil when they're cooking, or they'll forget to log the butter that they put on something. Whenever you're forgetting those little things, they add up. And it's that, but wasn't that really that much? You'd be surprised at how much all those little things end up adding up over time. And usually that's usually the problem. And it's also where people get frustrated, right? They're like, I don't want to feel like I have to track all of my food. It's those things that they're getting stressed about tracking because they feel like, why do I have to be so meticulous? No, you don't have to be so meticulous. You're literally just grazing all day. And that's why you're having a hard time losing weight. So macro tracking is also a great way to give yourself some accountability and diagnose why you are not losing weight and why you are gaining weight. It's really what it is. It's literally eye-opening. In fact, I had this experience my very own self. I was eating very healthy, very clean. And I was like, oh my gosh, look how many calories I'm consuming unintentionally. And the little things that I didn't think were mattering were adding up. So I think that this is such a good thing for those of you guys that are like ready to take yourself seriously. And I know that, like, I know that this is something that it's the next level. It's the next step. It's not overly complicated. It's not obsessive or restrictive. It's literally just you are more dialed in with your nutrition because you care about your body. You want to see changes, and you don't always have to be using macros, quote unquote, for fat loss. Like, the good thing about macros is it's also something that you can use for a number of things. I optimize mine for performance, for health, right? Like, oftentimes one of the biggest things I troubleshoot with women with hormonal imbalances is they're not getting in enough protein, enough carbohydrates, or enough fiber, and they're getting entirely too much fat. We don't even want to mention alcohol because that's usually another issue. Okay, so like this also gives you guys, there's no more guessing. You keep paying all of these doctors and all these different diet programs and, supplements and all this stuff. And like, you literally have the best tool at your disposal right now. So if you're going to do one thing different in 2025 and you have serious goals about changing your body composition, obviously improving your energy levels, it's learning how to optimize your macronutrients, not just restrict your macronutrients, not just eat less, but actually learn how to optimize your nutrition from a macro-based approach to help you dial things in even more. Okay, so hopefully this episode was helpful for you guys. If you have any questions about getting started with macros, I have tons of guides and resources, a simplifying macro tracking guide. I've got food lists. I've got all kinds of stuff that I can give you guys, but I did want to start by giving you guys all the opportunity to use my MacroRX to help you figure out where to start. And then we can always go from there. So that's going to obviously I'll send you an email. So we'll be able to connect via email, and hopefully that will help you all get started. So looking forward to 2025. If y'all have any questions, shoot them my way.